Good afternoon, everybody. Great that you are attending this webinar on restarting clinical trials, and the story is all about QPS and the fact that QPS is ready to start clinical trials. So today we have Mariska Beukers talking and presenting. Mariska is the director of project management, and she will be talking soon. She has prepared some slides for that. Talking about that, the agenda is that I will start with some slides, maybe 10 minutes for me to talk, and then Mariska will take it over. She has a 30 to 40 minute presentation. During the presentation, there will be time to raise questions. And in fact, there are two ways to raise a question. There is a possibility to raise your hand virtually, but you can also use the chat function. So if you raise your hand virtually, then I can give you the word and you can ask direct questions to Mariska. If you want me to ask Mariska the question, then you can use the chat option. There is also a handout, which are the slides from today. It's a PDF. So after the meeting, you can also go through the slides one more time if you want. And there's also a possibility to ask questions as well. So I hope everything is clear. And then I would like to start the presentation. And I would like to start with some general slides about QPS. It will not be very long, like I said, a couple of minutes, but just for you to know who we are, what we do, and where we are. So QPS is a full service CRO, and on the screen you can see our core competencies being neuropharmacology, DMPK, toxicology, dermal and transdermal research services, clinical development, translational medicine, and bioanalysis. QPS is a mid-sized CRO with approximately 1,300 people, and we have locations all across the globe, as you can see in this next slide. A lot of information. Maybe it's good to look at the details later on, but just to point out that we are a global company and doing more than only clinical development. We're currently present in North America, in Europe, India, Taiwan, and also in China. Then more focused on our early phase clinical facilities. You can see them on the screen at the moment. So there you can see that that we have 2 clinical sites in the US. We have 2 clinical sites in the Netherlands, in Europe, 1 in India, in Hyderabad. In Taiwan, we have 1 phase 1 unit. And then in China, we have 2 partnering sites. Altogether, it takes us to almost 700 beds, and that takes us in the top 3 of largest early phase clinical CROs in the world. Again, on the left-hand side, you'll see the facilities and the number of beds. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see our service offering. So we offer what we offer to our clients. So from first-in-man first-in-man studies, so single ascending dose, multiple ascending dose, food effect studies, but also microdosing studies, clinical PK/PD studies, cardiac safety studies, vaccine studies, proof of concept, human mass balance, imaging, DDI studies, BA/BE studies, and also special population studies. This is my last slide, which shows that next to the clinical conduct, we can also facilitate other services around the clinical study. From writing the protocol, including writing the report, and everything in between. So data management, biostatistics, medical writing, pharmacovigilance. So a full service CRO. Are there questions for me? No, good. Then I'll give the presentation to Mariska. Yeah, we can see your screen, Mariska.
Okay. Still clear?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, thanks, Edwin. So Edwin presented some general slides on QPS, and I will focus on the current situation, of course, on the COVID-19 situation, and I will present some slides with the current situation, what happened in the Netherlands, the precautions we will take, and I will guide you through the presentation. So first of all, risk mitigation. In general, some information for you on the impact of the COVID-19 situation, specifically also in the Netherlands. So our government announced on the March 15 a stay-at-home situation. So it's not an official lockdown, but almost a lockdown, I would say. So a lot of activities were cancelled. So for us, it means that we could not continue with our clinical activities, except for some patient studies of which patients were already enrolled and with benefits for the patients. So we had some trials that continued in the COVID-19 situation. And in the meantime, we continued with the preparation of studies. Of course, people could work from home. We did everything we can to be ready as soon as we could start our clinical activities again. So that was the situation, well, the last months, I would say. Well, the good news appeared on May 18. So our competent authority approved the restart of clinical studies. There is a document, and I will go over the details later on some slides. Of course, there are a lot of requirements to do the restart, but the good news is that they approved the restart. And prior to this date, we had some good discussions with our ethical committee, with the competent authority, with the government. So we were heavily involved in those discussions, and altogether, finally, the competent authority came with this approval with the document, and I will go over the details later on. So, and in fact, yesterday, officially, we restarted our clinical activity. So we started screening yesterday again. So during the COVID situation, we developed globally a plan to open our sites for clinical conduct. Of course, mitigation was very important with risks to subject and staff, of course, so that was our top priority and is our top priority. With specific, of course, especially we take into consideration so personal protective equipment for our staff, and specifically a dedicated clinic, screening, dedicated clinics, keep everything separate, and I will go over details on that later on. One other important aspect we developed within QPS is, from our end, it's very important to have testing for COVID-19. So that's available on all sites, and we work with local vendors. I also have a slide on that later on. And of course, we will continue to follow government guidelines, recommendations for social distancing for both screening and clinical conduct. So yeah, this is like a general overview, and I will go over the details later on. So to guide you through our process, we developed like a flow chart, and I realize it's maybe small, so I will guide you through to read everything. So in general, the boxes in pink are for screening, and in blue, it's the admission in the clinic and clinical execution. And in gray, you will see kind of the screen failures or the failures within the process. So it started on the top on the left with a phone screen. So as soon as we start, we will of course do a phone screen. People will be asked with specific questionnaires about the COVID-19 situation. So history, travel, contact. Is there any history? And that you then you go to the right. Then of course it's a phone screen failure, so no one will be invited. If there are no concerns, you can follow the arrow, then subjects will arrive or will be invited for screening. There's a dedicated screening center separate from the clinical unit. So their arrival starts, and then you go to the right again with the arrow, and people will be asked again for COVID-19 symptoms. And that will also be, part of that will also be body temperature. So if there's any symptom, then it's an on-site COVID-19 screen failure. So the subject will not continue in the process. If there are no symptoms, you can follow the arrow again, then we will proceed with ICF and screening. And we can do testing at screening, so it's not required from our government. Initially, from our end, we also say it's not required, but this can be discussed up front with the sponsor. If testing is required, we can do COVID testing. So then you follow the arrow with test if required. We can do COVID testing at screening if deemed necessary by either the site or sponsor or study. And then, of course, if we have a positive test, then we have again a screen failure. If it's negative, then we continue with the screening. If there's no testing, of course, we will also continue with the screening. And we have, of course, a lot of precautions taken for screening, and I will go over the details later on. So after screening, you can follow again two arrows, and if the subject meets the screening criteria, there's no concerns on COVID, then you go to the left with the arrow, and then people will be invited to our clinic for admission. Of course, if it's a screen failure according to the study criteria, we have a screen failure according to the protocol. So then that's kind of the screening process. So those are the boxes in pink. And then we continue with the boxes in blue, which is clinical conduct. So if there are no concerns on COVID, the subject is approved according to the protocol, then the subject will be invited for admission. Again, in a controlled study environment, and the first thing is, of course, then COVID testing. We do a real-time PCR test, and I have a slide on that later. And then this is a global document, so we say 48 hours we have results. Within the Netherlands, we have results within 24 hours, which means we will invite subjects 1 day prior to the day of the protocol. So, for example, if you have day -1 in the protocol, in this case, we will invite subjects on day -2 to have them in-house, controlled environment. And then we wait for the results. And then you can follow the arrow to, if it's a positive test, then of course we have a COVID-19 failure. If we have negative test results, then we will continue with the study in a QPS dedicated area where the clinical conduct will take place. And then we have on the bottom of this picture, we have, of course, you can have follow-up visits, you can have ambulant visits. And then if required by protocol or sponsor, we can do testing. It depends also on the design of the study. So this will be discussed up front. We can do testing. On the other hand, we can also do questionnaires, body temperature, and then continue with the subject. And then if we have negative test results, we, of course, then we can complete the follow-up visit in this case, or of course, if we have a positive subject, then it's again a failure. dependent on the study design, testing can be implemented where needed. So it's a kind of maybe complicated picture if you see this the first time. So Edwin, I think this is the right moment to see if there are any questions.
Yes, there